It is sad, but most of humanity who is not awake to themselves, what they go through. And there's been all sorts of movements and calls from God through, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses with the Awake magazine, and then we have the Catholic, you know, just the belief in God. Through the Buddhist, you call it, because God uses everything and everyone to achieve his goal. And even once you attain this state of mind that would be considered not perfect but wholesome, you still find yourself lacking something. And one thing that's really tough for anyone to fight is distraction. Because to fight distraction doesn't mean that you're not aware of it. You are aware of it, but it just passes by you and through you. So even with the whole wholesome thing, you need God. God is always a requirement, a prerequisite, I'd say, to life, living life in its fullest. So let's use the example of YouTube ads, or advertisements anyway, or any other type of distraction you'd think. Yes, you have to face it. At the same time, it doesn't mean you ignore it or you go numb to it, but rather you just acknowledge it, experience it with all senses, and then you let it go. Eventually, the mind always becomes free of what you train it to do, and the mind is really strong. You know, it's the one thing that never ever ever will be studied. The brain has so many intricacies in it that it can't be studied into, never will, ever. So the more you train it, the better it becomes, and the more you're good at facing all sorts of distraction. And you know, it is true, in the NRA, the US government denied collecting information from people, which it did. And then there's a whole big tech and everything. They collected all the information from people, personal information, not only for marketing, but trying to replicate the mind, the brain, which they never can. It's always trying to be smarter than the human level, and that is on God's level. That's why all of them seem so stupid at the end of the day, and always will be, because the logic of God, or God's mind rather, to man, is to come to a place of wholesomeness and submission. But no matter how far people try to advance themselves to understand things that they never will or can understand, you only fall flat on your face. And that's never gonna change. Because people wonder, am I a rock or a robot? Because as a young man, when I was younger, it was much harder to face distractions in any way. But the more I've grown up, you realize that you don't numb them out, but familiarity breeds contempt. So the more familiar and the more practice you do in any kind of situation, the harder it gets, the easier it gets. So just face it, face whatever distraction you feel. You know, if you feel men are a distraction, women, whatever sort of fear, it is an illusion. And unless you face it, it faces you. So therefore, I'm just sending strength to anyone who will hear these words, to know that you're never alone. All you need to is know that you're stronger than whatever shakes you to the core, whatever annoys you. Just face it all with a calm, non-judgmental face, period. It doesn't mean that you have to give in to the ways of the world. No, it just means you have to be yourself. and you have to be free. So, therefore, be happy and be free. Be yourself. And know that everything that's geared to get your attention, whether through advertisements or whatever, isn't really real. It's trying to replicate your attention. You know, the devil is really smart, but not as smart as God, and he always loses every single time. That's a given. So yeah, no matter what you're facing, just know that with God you're always a winner. Okay, alrighty, gotta go.